Thank you very much. And actually, I have the best seat in the house. And it was a little intimidating when I was asked to introduce Barbara and Bill. So they agreed to introduce each other tonight because we know that you know them, but a few of you may not know them as well as others. So, Bill, now don't give up too many of Barbara's secrets, but would you please introduce Barbara?
I first knew Barbara when she was a Girl Scout, I think. Almost said, no, I knew Barbara because, well, she just was around at the right time when we were doing Valley Leadership. And what I know about Barbara, I'll keep it to what I should not know about Barbara, maybe. I knew her when she was at ASU, and I admired this girl because I'll tell you what she was doing. She was from Pennsylvania, came in to go to ASU, and she wasn't a football player for Frank Kush, by the way, but most of them were coming from Pennsylvania. But what she wanted to do was to advance. I could tell immediately that she had a lot of ambition. And I said, what are you doing? How are you getting through ASU? And she says, I wash out horse stalls. Remember that, Barbara? And that was one way she was doing it to get through ASU. So I saw her advance through the first class of Valley Leadership, and she told us how to do it. We had made a mistake about doing some things. She said, guys, here's what you ought to do. And then Bill Franke and I and Keith Turley said, sure. You remember that, Barbara? And so she changed the original format of Valley Leadership. And so this lady, I was at her wedding, and I'll never forget her walking down the aisle with that beautiful bonnet on she had at the time. So all my life I admire this, my good friend, my Ambassador Barbara Barrett.
Thank you, Bill, and here I am all the way from the horse stalls and delighted to be in Arizona. My privilege to introduce the amazing Bill Shover. There's not a soul here that doesn't know or have had their lives influenced by the great work of Bill Shover. When we were working together, Bill was the head of community relations for the Arizona Republic. When the Arizona Republic was completely dedicated to extolling the virtues of our community and making our community a better place. Through Bill Shover, we got a community that was ever improving, ever increasing its capabilities, ever welcoming to new contributors to the community. Bill headed the Valley Leadership Class 2 project. The two of us teamed up. I was in Class 1, and Bill was one of the CEOs that was among the leaders, though not a CEO, he outranked all the CEOs who were involved with it. And then in Class 2, Bill was the head of it, and I was the program director. And we instituted some new parts of the program, which was absolutely great. Bill Shover, 96 years old, 96 years of dedication to this community. Would you join me in thanking Bill Shover for all he's done?
Oh, God. I want to cry.
Well, thank you both very much for making my position, my job, easier tonight. And as we celebrate this 75th year of highlighting leadership in our valley, what do Arizona leaders need now more than ever? What do you think, Bill?
Ladies first.
Bill, you said you wanted to go first.
What we need more than ever, I think, is more binding in the community. I think the leaders, and I don't even know who they are, to tell you the truth, the corporate leaders are not what they used to be in the old days. And that's not like an old man saying that, but they come in and they have nice jobs, and they paid lobbyists to do more of their work at the legislature and all those things. But they don't get in like the old guys used to get, like, Cole Angelo. Is he still around? That was one guy I'm thinking of how he came here with nothing and what he's turned this time around. Or Michael Crow, how he came here, how he turned this around. And they weren't Valley Leadership people, but they were the leaders that we learned to follow, and we were blessed to have them in our community. But when I think of the people in this room, this is Arizona right here, folks. You're all to applaud yourself because you are the ones who made this state what you had. All we did is we gave you a little direction, and you took over. And I'm so proud of everybody in this room. I know most of you, and to say that I'm not throwing just all these compliments for any reason except to say, you did it, folks. And people like me and Barbara and others get a lot of credit for the things, but thank God for Valley Leadership.
And Bill, when we spoke, you talked about big ideas, that Arizona needs some big ideas. And you and a few others had a big idea. I think it was called the Super Bowl. You want to talk about that?
Well, Super Bowl was a thing to express to the community that we were a big time. When I first came here, we didn't have any professional sports at all. When Jerry came with the team in 1962, we jumped all over Jerry to get it, to make a success of the Suns. We even sponsored their first game. We paid for their first game, if you can imagine, for the Suns. But we needed to have the name in the paper every day. When you have a professional team, it's in the paper. You're thinking little towns like Green Bay and Cincinnati and Indianapolis. They didn't have big communities, but they had a lot of attention because they were in the sports pages. So sports was the thing to get it done, and we got on behind ASU, of course, with Frank Kush. That's really what made this city good and big. And the bowl game followed that, of course, and then the Fiesta Bowl followed that because we had established ourselves as a great sports community. So, and sports is only part of it, but if you're sports, you also have a good community, I think, if you look at the other towns who have great sports. And I think that we've shown the world that Phoenix is a remarkable place, and you people have developed the programs to make it even better. So I just say thank God to all of you. That I should say.
Well, that's perfect, Bill. Thank you. You know, Phoenix is in a different position than most of the cities in our country. I have a friend who's just under 5'4", but she has size 9 feet and size 9 hands, and she jokes that she never grew into her paws. And I think there might be an analogy for Phoenix in that there are some ways in which we've grown to be quite big, but we haven't quite grown into our paws on a few things. And it's a leader like Bill and Jim Bruner and others in this room who see what a big community needs and then go and fetch that, go make it happen, go after things and make the community better and stronger. We were the last major city to have a children's hospital. We were the last major city to not have a freeway system. But when we build a children's hospital, and when we build a freeway system, and when we build or recruit the sports teams, we went for greatness. And we are able to leapfrog a lot of those interim stages of mediocrity and go right to doing it well, doing it right, learn from the others, and get it right the first time. So I think that's one of the things that we've learned in the leadership here is that we get the opportunity to learn from other communities and avoid some of the mistakes that others might have.
And boy, when the two of you called a meeting, if you got a call from Bill Shover or Barbara and then Ambassador Barrett, you showed up. And you would clear your calendar for that. What were the ingredients that prompted us to show up and keep showing up?
Well, I recall that anytime Bill Shover or, for instance, Jim Simmons called a meeting, you knew you were going to have fun and you were going to be productive. Nobody took a nap during a Bill Shover or a Jim Simmons meeting. And I took a lesson from that you have the meeting be about camaraderie, about teamwork, about pulling together, about aiming at having a vision, aiming at that goal, and then get it done. I also learned that if you do something in a mediocre way, it's going to be like pulling teeth to get people to come and be a part of it and get involved. But if you do something first class, people trip over each other to try to get there and be a part of it. And I'm excited that this is a community that really focuses on doing things well. And I saw Karen Robeson is here. We've been working together on, for the first time since Pearl Harbor Day, there's about to be a Navy ship that carries the name Arizona, the USS Arizona. And we're working to have, when there is a ship that carries the name of your community, there is a responsibility on the part of the community to take good care of those troops, take good care of the sailors or Marines if there are some on that. Well, we, on December 7th, significantly, in 2022, we laid the keel for a new submarine that's going to be called the USS Arizona. And a christening will take place probably in 2026, and then a commissioning a couple of years after that. We want, and we've already started to earn, a reputation that the team in Arizona is doing a first-class job at taking care of the crew and making sure that 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 nobody on that ship is going to be sorry that they were assigned to the USS Arizona. And it's one more of those occasions when we will hope to have the name Arizona be a name that's associated with great quality. So,
Thank you, Barbara. That's awesome. That's exciting. Bill, you want to add anything to that?
I can't add anything Barbara ever says.
she takes so long to say it, right?
Well, through the 75 years, we've honored leadership from every sector, private, public, nonprofit, charitable. How important is it that leaders from all sectors work together today?
No question about it. And I feel like some of the people here who are leaders, you call them, come in to run banks or organizations, and they don't get their feet in the community. I mentioned that before. I think the lobbyists take over for some of those things. But they don't have the spirit that we had when I came here in 1962. And before that, when people started developing it from a village to a city, there was spirit about this place. I remember Pulliam told me a story about a young man coming to his office one time and said he wanted to run for public office. Mm-hmm. And Pulliam says, "Why would you want to do it?" He says, "Well, I want to be something to help this community." And he said, "Well, what do you do?" He says, "Well, I am not much of anything, but I'm more or less known as a man about town. In fact, if I ran for office, only vote I get would be from the whorehouses." And that's a true story. And the guy's name was, what was his name? Barry Goldwater. That's a true story. And I think he did pretty well after that. So anyway, there's so much talent in this community. And a lot of people move from other places to come here with their talent. And we use their talent because we need the talent that comes in from other communities. We were a very small place when I got here, and Barbara came a little bit later. But people, if you decide you want to do something, you can form your own committee, and you form them all the time. And people get behind you. And when you start a parade, you'll find people getting behind you. And if they get behind you, suddenly they're helping you, and they're getting ahead of the parade. So we're lucky to have the wonderful people that we have who come here and say, "I came from so-and-so, but I want to make this place better than I came from." So that's why we have such development in here, and why we'll always have people coming here to make it an even better place. So thank you all who are here today, too.
And Barbara, I remembered you rallying a big idea with all those sectors in mind, and that involved Sally Ride. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Well, I'd been working with Sally Ride on a lot of space things, and she was starting a new idea. She thought that girls needed to be involved in the STEM fields, and that she saw the statistics. In 4th grade, girls and boys do comparably. By 8th grade, the girls are starting to slip behind. By 12th grade, girls are not, they are desperately behind boys in science and math. And it seems that it's not a talent, it's a social issue. But that making science cool was what she was all about. So she decided to start something called the Sally Ride Science Club. And she had tried this in her sister's hometown in Atlanta, and she had tried it in her own hometown of San Diego in small schools. But she thought maybe Arizona would be a place to give it a try. So I worked with Albacore and team at ASU, and we had the first Sally Ride Science Club gathering that was not at either her or her sister's home. But we started by going, who are our additive, who are our team to put this together? The first thing we did was to say who would be supporters of it. So we got the business community, we called a meeting, and I see Bill Post is here. The Arizona Public Service hosted at the boardroom, at their boardroom, a meeting of the business leadership to say, is this something that you could support? And then we went across to the Science Center, and we said, we got the Girl Scouts, the Big Sisters, the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. We pulled together all of the contingent, the potential constituencies, organizations, and said, here's an idea, is it something that you would support, and how would you support it? And got the community behind it. And then put the event together, and the largest one ever that Sally ever did was at Arizona State University. She came back to ASU 6 years in a row and did it personally, where a lot of the other universities, she would recruit other astronauts who would go and do them at other universities, but she would come back to ASU each year, and that, let me just tell you the impact of that. So at the first Sally Ride Science Festival, an extraordinary woman, ASU graduate, Caltech graduate, was running the meteorite lab at ASU, one of the top 3 meteorite collections in the world. Laurie Leshin was running the meteorite lab. Laurie met Sally, and the two of them just hit it off quite well. Sally, as you would imagine, was the big name. Everybody knew the name Sally Ride. Sally was being invited to do everything. When they had the Challenger Commission, when they had the Columbia Commission, Sally was the only person that was on both of those. And anything having to do with space, Sally Ride was tapped. But Sally didn't want to do more than 2 things at a time, 2 involvements. So she would bump things to Laurie. Laurie came to the attention of NASA. Pretty soon NASA said, hey, Laurie, why don't you leave this ASU gig and come be chief scientist at Goddard Space Center of NASA? And when NASA saw her, she got to know the way, she went up and up in NASA. Then one of the advisory board members at NASA recruited her away to be the Dean of Sciences at Rensselaer Polytechnic. And then from Rensselaer, they recruited her to go to Worcester Polytechnic and be president of that school. And just a year and a half ago, Caltech recruited her away. She is now the lead of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Mankind's exploration of our universe is led by Laurie Leshing from ASU, and she is really a great leader in that field now.
So building our leaders through the connections that we have, the connections that each of you have, and also remembering the leaders who have come before us and who are no longer with us. And I'm so glad you mentioned our dear friend Elva Kaur. Her memorial service and celebration of her life is this Sunday. And we all miss her, and we are all very grateful for the leadership and all the ways she allowed us to have a lot of fun. Well, for the next 75 years, what do Arizonans, what do these leaders need to keep in mind to make this a great state for people to live and for people to come back to? Bill, what do you think?
Well, one of the outgrowths of Valley leadership is in our first class was Gary Trujillo. Some of you may know Gary. He's started a group in South Phoenix mostly called Be a Leader. And he meets with these kids one time every month, and he's placed these kids in positions to get in political life and other things. I see nodding heads. They are around. This is a groundswell program that Gary's done because of Valley leadership that you probably didn't know about. But that's what we wanted when we started this thing, is that find people who pick somebody else off the street and do something with them. And as she decided on this one individual, it works, folks. If you find someone that you think there's a possibility, and get your hand around and put them into some responsibility. So that's what I think is happening with Valley leadership too.
Barbara?
Well, another instance where what is it what we need? In many cases, it's looking around and looking for what are the best ideas. Valley leadership was an idea that was not founded here, but it was an adaptation of what some other communities were starting to do, and the Valley pitched in, did it better, and changed a lot of lives. And so there are many things that other communities are doing well, and we can learn from them. One of the things that, an example from Arizona, is that Johns Hopkins University has for decades been tracking the top 2% of our high school kids, school kids across the country. And then they started something that is referred to in the New Yorker magazine as Nerd Camp. These top 2% kids get invited to a camp in the summer, and these kids who are outliers in their classroom, but they go to Nerd Camp and they see there are other kids, 8th graders, that are interested in chaos theory or in trajectories of rocket launches and things. So they started a camp where these top kids get together and grow from each other and feel that they're now a part, they've got their tribe. They know each other and but these nerd camps were run across the country, but there was none in the Rocky Mountain West. And a friend of Elva's, was the mother of two students who had been invited to those camps, but had to travel. So parents of, these are 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, parents who are well-heeled could have their 7th, 8th, or 9th grader go to Chicago or go to Dallas or go to some place for the nerd camp, but are less capable, are less financially deep community members, they couldn't go these long distances. So we wanted to have a nerd camp or the Center for Talented Youth event here in Arizona, and Arizona State hosted it. So Johns Hopkins did a camp here for a couple of years. And then you'll recall we had that year when it was 122 degrees. They'd read the newspapers. They heard that people were dying on the streets in Arizona, and they thought they were endangering the children. So they canceled and weren't going to come back. So Elva and team decided, well, the people of Arizona, the students of Arizona deserve access to this kind of thing as well. So we started a camp at ASU that for all Arizona kids, and welcome for kids from around the country as well. But we knew what Johns Hopkins did, and we could do everything they did and put together a program that matched theirs. But we dropped in a few little special add-ons. They didn't have any guest speakers. It's a 2-week program. On the Tuesday of the first week, Sally Ride dropped in as their concluding speaker. On Thursday of the first week, Sandra Day O'Connor came by. The following Tuesday, the Adjutant General, Dave Radicek of Arizona, came by. And so that they had everything they would have gotten at a Johns Hopkins program. But here in Arizona, we did them one better. And I think that's the idea. Let's learn from others. And saying I have been quoted on quite a bit is, better than we used to be isn't good enough. We need to be as good as we can get. And let's figure out what's the best role model, what's the best guide, and then let's see if we can't do better than that. That's what I think makes Arizona a great place.
You know, and that's what you said, Barbara, or somewhat of what you said years ago when you made sure that people knew that your priority was education, and we're so honored to be able to honor tonight Vince, and also the health of people and the health of our planet for our other honoree, Nita Francis. So you have been consistent through all these decades in your priorities. Thank you very much.
Well, like so many other people, education is the gateway. It was for my life, and it will be for others.
Okay, so before we get any questions from the audience, what would you two tell your younger selves? Bill, what would you tell your maybe 80, maybe 60, but come on, Bill, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Well, I'll tell you how I learned things in life. There was a theater in my neighborhood, and it was called the Avalon Theater. I went there for 10 cents a movie. I learned about all things of life in that place, in that dark little theater, 10 cents a night. And I learned about life, I learned about culture, I learned about things that gave me an uplift of what I could do in my life. My parents they were Irish people, and they didn't really have any education. Both of them went to 2nd grade. So if it hadn't been for something like as simple as going to the Avalon Theater to find out about life, but I found out from people that I met through life who gave me inspiration to do things. And one of them, I hate to tell you about the Gene Pulliam. He was the greatest guy I think I ever met. He was my mentor. He was misunderstood for a lot of people because he didn't like freeways. You knew that. But he did other things that were great. And some of the people in this room had worked for Pulliam too. And I think that we found a lot of leadership in that man. And I think about him every day. And I think about his wife and what she did, leaving a foundation for many people. So am I wandering off too fast?
You're good.
Okay.
Barbara,
Well,
what
I
would you
would
tell your younger self?
I would emulate what Bill has said, and that is find someone, Pulliam in your life or Bill Shover in mine maybe, but find someone who you respect, someone that you admire, someone who has the qualities that you value, and find ways to hang around with them. find ways, carry their briefcase, figure out a way to get to see and be close to someone who's worthy of admiration. We've just gone through an election. A lot of people have been unhappy about the election. But if you believe in democracy, then find someone running for something who you can believe in and give them a hand. It is a thankless kind of role, but we are proud to have a democracy in our country. And that only works if you find somebody you believe in and you get to work for them and help them be in leadership and government roles. But that's in the political side, but in the community side, in the business side, in all of what you do, look for people that have the values that you respect and get a chance to hang around with them.
And I would carry your briefcases wherever you go. Any questions? Anybody want to ask some questions before we enjoy the rest of the evening and the reception? This is your chance. Some quiet time with Bill and Barbara. Yes, Betsy.
Bill, I presume that you were a member of Phoenix 40. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Well, I'd like to hear about that because that's where Valley Leadership got started, and I think it morphed into Greater Phoenix Leadership. But I just look back and I think what a brilliant move that was to pull people together, and this is Valley Leadership as one of the things that came out of that. So why don't you just tell us what that was like at the time?
Thank you, Betsy. You led right into something I wanted to tell you about. My good friend Dick Mallory, most of you know Dick, was at a program from the gentleman who came from Dallas, Texas, and he was in town speaking, and he talked about Dallas after the death of Kennedy. They had so much bad publicity about Dallas, what happened there. People, and talk shows were talking about people in hoods in Dallas, Texas, and things like that. So they wanted to do something, so they started a program that became like their Valley Leadership. And so as they talked, Dick said to me, could we get someone to do this thing in Phoenix? And I said, well, I guess there's a guy we can do it that I know, and you know a guy too named Frank Snell. If we get those two guys to call a meeting, maybe we can get them to do it. So Pulliam said, I'll call the meeting. We were having trouble with the legislature. They weren't strong at the time. There were other things going on. So Pulliam wrote a very terse note to him saying, we got trouble in this River City kind of thing. He said, we need to have some leadership come together. We'd like to have you and several people meet on this certain date in 2 weeks, and no excuses. You got to show up. Don't send an alternate, nothing like that. You got to be there on your own. Every guy showed up. And I hate to tell you, it was all guys. That was a different era. This is the women were not thought of to do these things, but there were no women CEOs. It would be a change now, which happened. I think Valley Leadership let a lot of young people coming out who were female, who got positions like this lady right here. So they got together and Pulliam got behind the whole thing. And my gosh, he said, what about the first meeting we had with Raul Castro? He was the governor at the time. We said no politicians involved. He says, I'd like to come. And he said, I'd like to get you guys, you're the leadership of this community, you're the business leadership mostly, and I want you on my side. And the membership of Valleyship, we did a survey one time, was about 80% Republican, 20% Democrat. And all those Republicans, every guy wanted to get behind Raul Castro, and they did. Bill Riley, who was a strong guy, went out there and became his advisor, and he did things that had never been done in the state of Arizona. I think you probably don't know about that, but Bill Riley worked for the governor at the time, and he taught Castro how to do things, and a lot of things were done. And that was our first Spanish leader. Think about that, our first Spanish governor, too, who did unusual things at the time. So when he got them all together, he said, boys, what are we going to do? Well, at that time, 2 weeks later, we had the shooting of a gentleman getting pardon me? Don Boldt. That was an outgrowth of it. They had a shooting, killing this man, and they thought it was Las Vegas was coming into the town. So we said, we're vigilantes, we're going to do it. And we had one of the guys saying, he said, we're not vigilantes, we're citizens. They said, well, act like vigilante. So 40 started out, and we were a secret society. No one knew who we were, but people kind of figured out who they were. So we finally came out and said who we are. We had a meeting at Civic Plaza, and then we invited the media to come in. First question came from one of our reporters, said, "Who paid for the room today?" And they said, "Well, this is a civic thing." And they did the city of Phoenix give you this to be kind of dacoits for them? And it was a reporter, and we said, "No, it shows you how reporters think." I'll tell you that. They were the most questioning people, and this was Gene Pulliam's idea. When you think about this, he never told his reporters what to do. So that was the outgrowth of getting it done. And later on, we said, well, we're going to tell everybody who they are. And so quietly, they got a lot of things done at the time. And at the same time, Don Bowles was assassinated. And of course, that gave us more impetus to do some good things in the community. And we got more communities together and communities working out things on their own. So it was a different time, but it all worked out. Maybe the death of Don Bowles out, and I'm not sure, but it was something some of you will remember what happened.
Yeah, and we know GPL has got a big celebration coming up and a historical timeline and video, and we know there's lots of chapters in that one. Other questions? Maybe one more question. Yes? Gene? I don't know.
Mr. Shover and Barbara, of all the things you've accomplished in your life, what are you most proud of? What is the most special thing? And I will say, Bill, I tried to carry your briefcase and you wouldn't let me. It was a tour of St. Mary's Food Bank. So what are you most proud of?
Well, something that people don't think I did, and I'm very proud of it. You will never believe this, but bringing the anchor from Pearl Harbor. You probably didn't know that anchor you see out there by the thing. I was chairman of the Bicentennial Commission at the time. I had a call from Jack Williams, he's the governor. He said, "Bill, they have the anchor from Pearl Harbor." And by the way, this is the anchor from Pearl Harbor. The one you see when you go out to the ship now, that was a reserve anchor. And this anchor, if you look at it, you can see the sand pebbles in the anchor itself. We had to get the Navy to bring it over from San Diego to bring it in. We had a public event about it, and I asked Bill Riley to have an architect design this thing that you see. He did that. And that was just one little thing that happened that people don't think it was ever there's no plaque on there saying why we did it. Don't even have my name or anybody else. But that was probably the proudest thing I drive by, and I think about patriotism, and I think about all those men on the ship. We got the name of every man who went down with the ship. It's on there, and we got the copper people of Arizona to contribute to all those plaques that you see in the base of the ship. So that was a little thing, but I thought it was a big thing at the time.
It is indeed a big thing. Barbara?
That's a very big thing, Bill, and it's especially relevant now with the USS Arizona. I'd have to say that the most impactful thing that I've done was the establishment of a new military service, standing up the Space Force, taking the United States Air Force leadership, and under the Department of the Air Force umbrella, there now are two services, the Air Force and the Space Force, much like under the Department of the Navy. There's the Navy and the Marine Corps. As the secretary who stood up the Space Force, that was a pretty significant challenge to do. And I think and hope that the outcome was much smoother and less broken glass than when the Air Force was separated from the Army.
We have time for one more. Do you have one more question? Yes.
Hi, Barbara.
Hello.
Hi, Bill. Bill, I thought you were going to say you and I dancing the conga at the Super Bowl was the most important thing you ever did. But what I'd like to know from each of you is, where do you see Arizona in 10 years?
Ladies first.
Where do we see the state?
The state, yes. 10 years.
You know, I have complete confidence in this community, and I think it's getting bigger and better all the time. And we've got challenges, and we have to address them. But I think this is a community born in a desert. 100 years ago, we had the kind of leaders that said, we're going to have some dams, we're going to have water, and water every spring melts from the mountains and runs to the sea. We built some dams, more water, more dammed water than than we need right now, but we have to be attentive to what are we going to do for the future. We need the kind of leadership today that will have the vision for what we're going to need 100 years from now. We've got challenges that we have to address, but we've got, especially as a result of Valley leadership and people like in the room. And in the room, there's one person I want to call out. There's an additional board member here from the original board of Valley Leadership, Bill Shover and Tommy Espinosa. And I think that if you would join me in celebrating Tommy. But I think good things are coming for our state, but it's going to take vigilance. It's going to take people working together. It's going to take what this community's always had, which is people working across party lines, across rural and urban. Our bigger issues have always been rural and urban, or there are lots of ways to be divided. What we need to look for are ways to come together, and with that, I think Arizona will be great.
I'm not a visionary, and I don't know much about things like that. But you see the possibility of this state. We're not bound by a seashore, so you can go all different directions, and people can hear. And if people will get together in Arizona and say, one county can do this and all this sort of thing can happen, I suppose. But this place has so much development, and the possibility it's just on the brink of what it can be, in my opinion. Gosh, you say, what's going to happen in 10 years? I won't be around for another year probably, so I don't know. I don't know that, but I just can't imagine what this place will be. But I think the people that we've developed in Valley Leadership will be a part of it, no matter what. I think they have learned through their lessons and their visits about how things work. That's why we wanted to make sure when they got in the program that they didn't know how the things that happened on the Air Force Base or something like that. And in fact, they could shadow people, the old days and all that sort of thing. It's an open thing that Valley Leadership has a big responsibility what happens, I think, in the next 10 years or beyond that. So I know you people are younger. I hope you're around for a long time to do those things and to be advisors to Valley Leadership and groups like that. There's one like the Tommy Espinosa, not Tommy, Tommy, who am I thinking of? Pardon me?
Tommy Espinosa?
No, and I know him. No. Tommy, pardon me?
Nunez?
Be a Leader program. Who knows about that? Gary Trujillo. Thank you. Anyway, Gary has started this program. He was in our first effort of leadership. He's got young kids now going to the thing called Be a Leader. And he's finding people who are coming who were never thought to be a leader. They came from bad backgrounds, and many of them. But he gives them inspiration. When you look at where he came from, his background too. It's a possibility. America gives you every chance you have in your life. We are the luckiest people in the world. That's why God made this a special place. But I think the special place of America is Arizona. I think we are the melting pot of this community, of this state, and the union, this United States. And they come here because they didn't like their own town where they came from. And that's why we got people from every state in this union coming to Arizona and making it a better place, because Arizona is the last big threshold for this country when I think about it. And if you don't find growth in Arizona, you won't find it anywhere else. So 10 years from now, when you're all around, remember that we said the possibility here is just growing. It means more traffic and more things are going to happen. But when I came here in '62, my job was to help promote growth so we had more circulation for the paper. And I did a very bad job. Too much growth came. But anyway, it will happen. And God bless all of you who are in here, because you are the ones who are going to carry this torch from people like me, from Barbara.
And Bill, we all hope, I think I could probably speak for everyone in the room, that at 96 years old, that we would be sitting here as you are today, with all these amazing stories and accomplishments, and what is truly represented in you, Ambassador Barrett, and you, Bill Shover, as true legendary leadership. Thank you for all you've done.
God will do it. I'll be great.
And yes, let's give him a round of applause.